All right, we're live. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. I'm Erin Erickson from Mom Enough, and today we're going to be talking about conscious discipline, calmer children, happier families, and I would say probably calmer parents too. Our guests today are from Mom Enough supporting partner Kinderberry Hill Child Development Centers, and they are a wealth of knowledge about child development, parenting, supporting children, educating children. So I'm thrilled to have our guest here today with us. We have Sarah Reichstadt, and she has been a part of Kinderberry Hill for over 20 years. You wouldn't know that. She looks too young to have been there for 20 years. While the first half of her career was spent in the classroom and management roles, Sarah has been the education coordinator for Kinderberry Hill for nearly a decade. Our other guest today is Katie Zhang, and for the past 13 years, Katie has been a teacher at Kinderberry Hill in Roseville. She is currently the Kinderberry Hill Conscious Discipline Coordinator, so she has a wealth of knowledge specific to this topic, as both of them do. And she's been guiding Kinderberry Hill's early educators with classroom management and behavior strategies. And they've both been a part of Mom Enough before, so we're just thrilled to have you both here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Erin. We're happy to be here.
Yes.
Well, we're thrilled to have you, and we're thrilled to have Kinderberry Hill as a supporting partner of Mom Enough. My children went to Kinderberry Hill, and my brother's children went to Kinderberry Hill, so it's kind of a family thing, and we've had just such positive experiences there. Now, of course, our kids are grown and teenagers now, so beyond the stage of Kinderberry Hill, but we're grateful for the time they had there. So let's take a deep dive in. And can you tell us what is conscious discipline?
Sure. Conscious discipline is a mindful approach to social and emotional learning and self-regulation. It teaches skills such as impulse control, assertive communication, and moving through feelings that may be a little bit more difficult or we're uncomfortable with, such as disappointment and anger. It's rooted in the most current brain research and child development information.
Well, that's great. I know some of the hardest parts about parenting are, of course, when those challenging behaviors or emotions come up. And I know when my kids were little, it usually happened at the most inopportune times, like you're at the grocery store or you're with a bunch of people. And I remember the first time I met my husband's brother and wife, my kids, they got some like juice boxes for the kids, and my kids really never had juice at the house. It was not like, I don't know, we just used juice. We gave lots of like Whole Foods and stuff, but not juice. And so my kids weren't used to having that much sugar, and they were like complete terrors. And I think that my husband's brother and his wife were like, wow, these kids are really a handful. Now, they hadn't had kids of their own yet. So once they did, I think they had a better understanding of it. But those are the moments where conscious discipline probably would have been super helpful for us. So can you tell us a little bit more about why parents play such an important role in conscious discipline?
Yes. Parents play one of the most important roles because conscious discipline is based around the adult first. So as a parent, as a teacher, as an adult, if I am not able to regulate myself, I'm not going to be able to regulate children. I have to be regulated before I can help them with their own big emotions. Adults, this comes really naturally to us with babies. A baby's crying, a baby's really upset. We pick it up, we rock it, we talk quietly to the baby. But we tend to act differently when a 5-year-old comes up with a big emotion, yelling at us. It's that we have to consciously really regulate ourselves first before we just react with our own big emotion. And so that's kind of the key part of conscious discipline. The parent is one of their first teachers. So I need to be able to regulate myself in order to teach them to do the same.
Oh, that makes so much sense. I think about how many times those times where maybe I wasn't at my best
Oh,
as a
yeah.
parent,
Yeah.
it's definitely because I was just as dysregulated as the kids were,
Yeah.
So I probably shared this with you before, but I like to talk with parents about that, kind of like 3 different ways to walk through the door of parenting when there's a challenge. And so, one option is where, when you're not at your best, you're kind of reacting and you just sort of
Yes.
charge through the door. You're not even really thinking about what's happening. You just react. The alternative, which I know some parents kind of like to lean on this approach, which is just to ignore what's happening. So, or just be kind of laissez-faire. So that might be more the laissez-faire approach
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
that. It's kind of like, I'm not even going to walk through the door.
Mhm.
But then I think of what is probably the conscious discipline approach is to open the door, take a look, what's happening, take a deep breath, and respond and walk through the door with a relaxed or at least a composed approach where you can respond effectively. So I feel like that's kind of really similar, and there's like a great
Mhm.
connection between that concept that the like way I like to think about that parenting approach with
Yeah.
conscious discipline. So, what steps, if we want to think about how are we going to be more mindful and regulated as parents, what steps can we take with that approach in mind to implement conscious discipline techniques at home?
Yeah, Erin, I think going off of just what you said, those 3 different doors and looking at the one door of, walking through calmly, we talk so much about not bringing fuel to the fire so that when your child is upset about something or disappointed or not happy with the way things are going, that to really check yourself, like to be aware of the triggers that you have, or if that child is pushing your buttons with their whining or crying or their immediate no response. And so, really knowing what is triggering you, what's pushing your buttons, being able to recognize that. And once you're more aware of it, you can pause in that moment, take a few deep breaths, calm yourself, and then, like you said, walk calmly through that door. So, you're bringing calm to the situation. So, that is one of the most helpful pieces. Another thing that we talk about a lot is connection. The more connected you are to a person, the more willing you are to maybe follow their directions. And when you are connected, you're better able to self regulate. And so, think about a time when you really felt connected to someone or really in sync with someone. Like you were just in that moment, you had that joy, and the stress of the day just kind of went away. Um, that is because of all, like, when you are connected, all those feel good hormones that your brain releases, the dopamine and the oxytocin, and that can happen on accident. But you can also be intentional about it to create those moments of connection. And you just need 4 things: eye contact, touch, be really present in the moment, and it's a playful situation. You're having fun with your child. And so think about how you can be intentional about adding those moments of connection into the day. Whether how do you wake your child up in the morning, or how do you say goodbye when you are off to work or school? Um, maybe you could have a special conversation at dinner, or a dance party even before dinner. So you can have special handshakes, different hugs. Um, just different things to connect with your child, and you can be intentional about it, and that will create that connection, and in turn they may be more willing to move through that transition or follow the direction, and also be able to better regulate those emotions that they have.
Oh, that's such great advice. I'm actually remembering when I was a child, my parents took us on a big trip, and we went on a ski trip in Italy, and so it was kind of a crazy thing. So it was so wonderful, and but everybody there called me Erina, not Erin. And so after that trip, my mom would tell me this like really elaborate bedtime story about the little Italian skier girl, Erina
Oh.
Bambina. And then every morning for when it was time to get up in the morning, she'd be like, Erina Bambina, your breakfast is ready.
Yes.
She would come in my room and wake me up and we'd have breakfast together, and not in my room, of course, but and so I think like that was such a great example of that, just kind of integrating that playfulness into everyday life, maybe drawing from experiences, special times you've had with your kids or experiences. And so I think that's so key, because it sounds to me like conscious discipline, and really any discipline or parenting at all, is challenging if you don't have a good foundation, a good relationship with your child. And I would just say too, if you're feeling like you're struggling with that relationship with your child, or you're struggling to connect with your child, to take note of that and to get support for that. There's lots of mental health providers, parenting coaches, and different kinds of resources that are available to parents. But I'm so glad you brought up the essentialness of that connection, to be able to kind of build off of that. So I'm wondering if you could give a couple of examples, maybe common scenarios that could illustrate conscious discipline in action.
Definitely. I think about maybe the challenges that I have in my own family or with my own kids, and bedtime definitely comes up for me. Or anytime we're moving to a new activity when my kids are really engaged in something. And so, it's bedtime. You've given the warning, it's just 5 more minutes before bedtime. And then you say, oh, time for bedtime. And you're immediately met with that. No, I don't want to do it. It's not time for bed. And so again, with conscious discipline, going back to that trigger, check yourself. Is that really pushing my buttons? That automatic no. Take a few deep breaths to calm yourself. And then you can offer your child empathy. You're feeling sad. You were really hoping to play longer. It's hard when things don't go the way that we want. And then, get close with them. Hopefully that's a little bit of connection. You're understanding how they're feeling. If need be, take a few breaths with them. And then to move through it, offer them choices. We can walk upstairs together, or we can jump upstairs together. Which do you prefer?
I love that. Choices are so essential in parenting. And I'm so glad you illustrated the importance of empathy, because I can think of times even as an adult where I don't want to go to bed. I want to keep reading a good book, or keep watching some TV show that I'm enthralled in, but I know I have that next morning meeting. So I think we can all relate to that. Like, I don't want to stop, but I love that you led with that kind of empathy and acknowledgement. And then it's a great way. I love the sense of the choice being, it's still kind of what the end goal is. You still want them to go upstairs, but like the choice is like, how do you want to go up the stairs? So it's not like, it's not, were we going to skip going to bed, or are we going to go to bed? It's how are we going to do this? So that's great. Are there any other scenarios or examples that you can think of that you could implement conscious parenting techniques or conscious discipline? I guess it is conscious parenting as well, but conscious discipline.
Another common thing that happens a lot, especially with young children, they'll go through sort of experimenting with, maybe it's name calling, like maybe they're silly head. Maybe I'm silly head. Conscious discipline says focus on what you want to see. So instead of saying, don't call me silly head, I can say, I don't like it when you call me silly head. When you want my attention, you can say, Mom, do you want to practice that now? I can say that. That will work a lot of the time. However, there will be that time when a child says, silly head, they're smiling at you, and they're just, not ready to stop saying that. Now, as a parent, I have to make sure I'm not triggered. Is that disrespectful? I kind of need to monitor myself for a second. But then I can say, oh, you're wanting my attention and to have fun with words. We could make up silly rhymes or tell jokes. Which do you want to do first? You start. And we can kind of change that instead of with staying in relationship with the child, instead of going, I said, no, do that again, or else, so we can kind of stay in relationship and keep that bond and connectedness going.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that's essential, that, it just doesn't work to be like, ultimatums, all these other things. I can tell you it doesn't work because I've tried it repeatedly. I mean, that's I think was it Einstein or whoever said, like, doing the same thing over and over again with the same results and thinking you're going to do it again with something different is just insanity. And somehow I've lived that quite a bit as a parent. So I guess maybe the key in that is none of us are perfect. And that really goes along with Mom Enough, because our whole approach is, you don't have to be perfect. There are going to be times where you're going to implement these techniques and do it really well. And then there's going to be times where it's going to be a total flop and you're going to be like, oh. So I think those times are the times where I say, boy, I didn't really handle myself there, and I'm sorry. Let's go back and do that again.
That's what I love.
Yeah.
That's what I love about conscious discipline too. The whole premise of it is not to be perfect. They call it conscious discipline because you're conscious of it. So you're like, oh, I did get off track here. I'm conscious of that. What can I do to get myself back on track?
Those times we're off track are the times we learn the most.
Yes.
They're the most beneficial in the long run, really.
Yeah.
When you notice those.
Yeah, that's so true. In life, it's often those moments where we didn't get the intended outcome or things didn't go the way we want that we're like, okay, not going to do that next time. And I would imagine with conscious discipline, you probably have a lot more of those moments where you're like, wow, that really did go well. Boy, that resulted in some good outcomes.
Yes.
So I'm going to keep using that technique. And so along the lines of kind of good outcomes, what kind of results might we see using conscious discipline methods?
I could speak to personal results. What I've noticed is just a calmer, less reactive household. More willingness to comply, which sounds more willingness to work together. How about that?
Yeah.
When we are in connection and in relationship, we're getting caught in less power struggles. And it's that little piece, just changing little things. When my children come in the door and I'm unloading the dishwasher, to say, hi, how was your day? While I keep stacking dishes in the cupboard, or to really stop for a second, look at their eyes and say, how was your day? Tell me more. We don't have to have a whole conversation, but that little intentional piece keeps us in relationship and connected. And then those come into play later when we're, it's time for bed and they don't want to. That little connection has made big changes. And with the responsive, not reactive piece, I'm seeing it with my children as well. Like when they would come to me with a big emotion, there were times when I wasn't at my best and might respond with a big emotion. But now I'm seeing it with each other. One will have a big emotion and the other, instead of just firing back, might pause for a second. On a good day, not every day, but might.
Yeah, wow,
So
that's
reactive.
That's a great outcome. And I think you started this conversation about talking about how parents are models for their children.
Yeah.
And so I think the more we can model kind of self-regulation and kind of shift into that co-regulation relationship with our children, they're going to learn that, and that's going to serve them for their whole lives, actually. I mean, I even in like my marriage, there are times where I could probably it's not discipline, but it's conscious marital relationships where I'm like, okay, I feel really annoyed by what's happening here, but I'm not going to react. And is this the battle I want to pick? I'm going to be really mindful about that. And so, I mean, even as parents, we can model this in our own relationships for our children as well. But that's quite the outcome when we see the kids in their interactions with each other, really modeling that too. I remember when my youngest son was young, he was a little more rambunctious. Maybe people would say spirited or whatever, but I'm just like, he was very creative and rambunctious and sometimes gave me a run for my money. So, but I used to do, because I do a lot of this in my own life, I do a lot of meditation and breathing exercises. And so I would often do that with him. I would just like put my hand on his shoulder or on his belly and say, oh, let's imagine filling up the balloon in our belly. And,
Mhm.
and it was perfect because not only did it serve him, but it also served me, because then I was doing the breathing with him. And so there was a time where he had made some not so great choices, and a friend had brought over a treat, and he was not being respectful. So I just said, well, you can wait. And if you can model some more respectful behavior, you can have the treat a little bit later. And so he was sitting at the table, and he was like, I saw him like,
Yes.
and he was like doing his breathing, and he's like, my brain is telling me to just grab the treat, but I'm not going to. So
Yes.
he was kind of like implementing those things for himself. And it was pretty funny. Like he often said, my brain's telling me to do it. I'm like, oh boy, but let's see if we can get your brain in a calmer place.
Mhm.
And then be more conscious about the next choice you're going to make. So that's awesome. Well, before I go to resources, are there any other things you want to share that we didn't get to, or other examples? Or you feel like we've covered it all?
I think we got it. Your last example was great. And
Yes.
it's so fun to hear just how he even recognized, he was conscious of like what his brain was telling to him to do. And he was able to put that pause in. My brain is telling me this, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to wait.
Using his pause.
Yeah.
It's great. It's so great. And I think, you know, what I've seen now, I didn't like know it was conscious discipline when I was implementing some of these approaches, and not some of the time. But I would say as teenagers now, it's really great to see where they're able to, because of the empathy and things that they experienced from me, that they're actually really knowledgeable from an emotional intelligence standpoint and able to communicate emotions now. And that emotion might be, you know, Mom, I'm feeling really annoyed with the questions you're asking me or something, but, you know, because they're teenagers. But I see that their ability to communicate in calm ways and to share their emotions, I think, is an ultimate, like, really big long-term outcome for kids who experience these methods. So it's worth the effort, and it's worth the continued attempts, even when it doesn't feel like you're getting it quite right. And along those lines, so for parents who are like, boy, this sounds really cool, I want to implement these techniques, but I think I need some more information. Where can parents go to learn more about conscious discipline?
Conscious Discipline website is always a great source, just consciousdiscipline.com. There are resources specifically for parents, and I believe there's even an online course you can take as a parent.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Conscious Discipline also has their own podcast. It's called Real Talk for Real Teachers. But if you search, there are pertainable to parents. I know there's one on helping your child going through immunizations. And so,
great.
Yeah. And then also Facebook and Instagram, if you follow Conscious Discipline. And then our website as well, kinderberryhill.com, has a Conscious Discipline tab where you can find more information.
Awesome. Well, we will definitely link to that. So if you visit the Mom Enough website and social media, we'll share a link to both the video if you want to watch it again or share it with someone. And then we'll also have those links as well. So thank you both so much. Again, our guest today, Sarah Reichstedt, Katie Zhang from Kinderberry Hill Child Development Center, is a supporting partner of Mom Enough. And we're so incredibly grateful for that partnership because the partnership allows us to continue to provide helpful information to parents for free and to be able to share your wealth of knowledge with our audience as well. So we're so grateful for that. So thank you both for joining us today. And thank you to all of you who tuned in. We so appreciate that you took the time to watch, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.